And there we are. Welcome back. This is the continuation of our trip through talking about builds, playstyle decisions, and stuff for every single frame in Warframe, the build lab, but in Warframe. And today we're on Mag. Mag has gotten the short end of the stick for a while. This was delayed quite a bit, but here we are. Here's the Twitch archive Parley forum for Thursday. I'll post the Discord update, and if you're watching on YouTube, this is the part of the show you're probably used to where there'll be a bit of an intro, how we doing, where are we, and then we'll get into it. You can use timestamps to jump around if you wish. Asymptomatic Synthrone, welcome back. Today we started a little early. I was feeling a little under the weather. I took some time to get a bite to eat, get those blood sugar levels restored, honestly, and I feel much better. So here we are. Finishing off the legs of some Cascara tea. And yeah, we're back. This is only the second one of these that I've done since we've returned to them. So I do want to briefly recap some brief iological differences. Iological, and I said brief twice. Welcome to me today. I want to recap some ideological changes that I have to this format. There we go. They're not huge. Just that I feel like I, in the past, have had a sort of misguided way of embracing fun when we do these. Previously, I had felt that it was better to focus on getting the kind of base effectiveness a player might want out of a Warframe in this case, out of the way. So even in other games, I would generally say what I thought would be a good generalist build option. Not because I didn't think that people should focus on that. That's the most interesting thing. It's not. Usually that was pretty straightforward, but I felt like that was the only thing that was useful for any context. You know, anyone could make use of that information. The problem is it's just not, it's not important enough. Like I could just make one video and you could have that build information for every game forever. And I will make that video, I promise, on the Zandypants YouTube channel. It's much better, I think, to focus on the many different hooks a player might enjoy when playing a frame. And so I'm focusing much more on doing that now. Does this mag have a helmet ability? Because that would be not what I want right now. Crush, polarize, magnetize, pull. Sounds good to me. Great. So with that, yeah, we'll launch in and talk about the kit, and then some suggestions for where you might like to take it, what I'm doing and why, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I definitely have a little bit of a different focus this time around. Pistol Whip, welcome back.
Here is your obligatory $2.50 from Amazon.com.
Thank you very much, Sam and the Fish. A Prime sub for 40 months, one of the oldest Prime subs I have. Welcome back, good to see you again. It's been a minute. How you doing? What's up? You came in time for Mag Day. Hello, Pants-san. Shalstev. Hello, Shalstev-kun. Genki. Hi. Pistol Whip, welcome back. I already see a really spicy recommendation for for Mag Helminth abilities. Ace, if you'll hold that thought, we'll come back to it in a minute. Mind Control, it has an interaction with Mag. Sure. That's pretty good. Yeah, let's begin our adventure, shall we? You always know it's going to be an adventure when the first suggestion anybody gives is mind control. One of the abilities of all time. Let's talk about Mag's abilities. Passive, you get a vacuum when you bullet jump. I thought it was, maybe they changed it. You get a little bit of a vacuum. This is inconsequential if you play Warframe the way I would fall to my knees and beg you to, which is never, ever, ever not using a vacuum or fetch mod on your companion, and never running a mission without a companion equipped. There simply is no reason not to. The only reasons I've ever heard over the years are the player doesn't want to invest in the companion, but even then it's better to have the vacuum and then your companion dies and you lose it. It's still better to have it for some of the mission. And the second thing I've heard people say is that you waste energy. I feel this is just patently not a problem in real gameplay. You will maybe absorb an energy orb when you have only a sliver of energy bar open. Like you don't need the full 25 energy the energy orb gives you, and you'll vacuum it in. but it simply isn't a problem for you if you overfill energy by that much most of the time. Maybe in some very specific loadouts, in some very specific situations, you desperately need to not take too much energy, and then you're going to find no energy orbs for some reason for a long time, but you have a ton now. That could maybe conceivably happen, but unless you're in that situation and you have a very specific reason to do it, you just always have a vacuum. So I would say this more or less isn't a passive, except when mag is a starter frame. Mag is one of the 3 starters available, in which case this is going to be pretty noticeable for the brief time that you don't have a companion. Passive 8-meter normal vacuum, it was changed to. I didn't know that. Ragnavar, thank you for the Prime sub for 25 months. Ahoy, time to suck. It is. Apparently, Mag's passive was changed to literally universal vacuum. So it's hard to say anything bad about that, but it won't make a difference in practice if you do the thing I would overwhelmingly encourage you to do 100% of the time, except at the very, very beginning of your time playing Warframe. I mean, I'm talking maybe an hour or 2, 3 hours into gameplay in Warframe. You probably have a vacuum now, and you never have to not have one ever again. Well, in like the index where you're not allowed to have a companion, there's a small handful of places where you can. I can't believe we're spending so much time talking about this stupid passive. Let's move on. As Rusty said, welcome back. It's double obsolete because of the pull augment. Pull is Mag's first ability, and you pull. I say pull in my region of the United States. Mag stuns enemies as she manifests a magnetic vortex. You just yank enemies toward you. As you can see in the graphic, you pretty artlessly yank enemies in your general direction. It does not make a neat pile on the ground. I definitely would not describe it as manifesting a magnetic vortex. I would describe it as shoving the enemies like, you know, when there's a bunch of crap on your desk or counter and you sweep it all off. It's more like that, really. No, not bad, which is to say not bad. They will be in a loose clump at your feet. Enemies yanked by pull tend to be prone, like they'll be on the ground. You might do a grounded finisher. If you walk up to them, you'll stab them or something. Area of effect melee weapons can be very useful for killing enemies like that. They do get vortexed for a moment now. Man, they changed mag again while I wasn't looking. Chat says no, you totally get a vortex. Anyway, we'll have to look at that. I'm sure we'll be in the simulacrum at one point during today. That's weird. They changed it. Okay, I guess we'll include showing that during the video today. Magnetize. You make a bubble around an enemy. You cast it on an enemy. They get a field around them that attracts bullets and also enemy bullets. And so if people try to shoot through it, they often won't be able to. It keeps you fairly safe. It can be very large with a lot of range, and it means your bullets will hit them if you shoot anywhere in the bubble with a bunch of asterisks. One thing that this ability does is actually drag your bullet physically downward toward them. So for example, if you shoot high up in the magnetized bubble, you will generally get headshots pretty reliably. If you fire a projectile with punch through, it may orbit the enemies a few times until its punch through runs out. Some projectiles have infinite punch through, etc. For people who are familiar with this ability, that's all pretty obvious, very thoroughly covered affair. You can also hold it to put it in front of you. That might be okay defensively. I think I would only consider doing that if you couldn't target an enemy, though. And while holding it, there's a bunch of stuff you can't do. Like I recall, you can't shoot your weapons, for example. You can't really use weapons while doing that, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if I recommend that incredibly highly. But broadly, this is a very powerful ability. You can make an enemy attract other enemies to it. It will group enemies up to some extent. The range can be very large. It's pretty much a death sentence for enemies inside it. And it can make some weapons headshot very reliably or hit enemies very repeatedly. What exactly you use to kill enemies while they're inside of this, I feel it doesn't matter much. But there you go. I think, by the way, Emily, you said I'm annoyed at this ability because it's the only one in the game where I don't want the tap and hold flipped. I think you might be able to set that manually for each ability. Let's check if that's true. And go demonstrate pull, because apparently I don't know what they once again changed pull to. Interface, maybe? Keyboard and mouse, customize key bindings, invert tap hold abilities. Yeah, I think you can individually do it for every frame nowadays, which is pretty extensive. That's cool. Love that. Build crafting your ergonomic experience. Big thumbs up from me, Digital Extremes. Yeah, let's just go look at what the heck is going on with pull now. I thought I knew, but apparently I don't. Bionic Mew said, Magnetize also does damage over time, scaling with the damage you deal to enemies inside it, I think. Bit similar to Zephyr's Tornadoes, but not quite as good. Yeah, there is some mechanic like that. The reason I don't dwell on it too much, but you should look it up in the wiki if you're interested in the details. I don't dwell on it too much because if you magnetize enemies and shoot them, they are dead. Like, unless the weapon you're using is a pillow launcher, enemies are condemned to death by being hit by that weapon. So I largely think it doesn't really matter. But you can, something I've seen people do is build up blockades in a tile, where a bubble has absorbed enough damage that new enemies walking into it straight up die at very, very high levels when a huge amounts of damage have accumulated in the bubble. So it's not like it could never possibly matter. I just feel like it doesn't warrant derailing too much time for. All right, let's see. Ooh, wow, that's a fairly tight group, isn't it? It definitely isn't like in the picture. You can see they actually do now form a neat little clump. Very nice, very nice. Okay, a fairly nice upgrade. Since we're here, actually, let's just show projectiles flying around in there. See that colored blade spinning around? That's a miter blade that I shot in there, and then it was orbiting inside, sawing enemies apart. Try jumping and casting it from above. Sure. You meant pull, I assume. Ho ho! You're approaching me. Very nice. Definitely different than the last 3 versions of pull. Well done. Thank you for correcting me, chat. Synthrone as well. Anyway, pull and magnetize. Good. Very good. Pull is Mag's Helminth ability as well. And so pull is put into the rat race of other abilities that pull enemies together. There's quite a few of them now. I have to say this one resembles Coil Horizon in its new form. It's like Coil Horizon, you throw a ball, kind of like a grenade that will suck enemies together. This is almost like that, but it happens directly at your position. I'm not sure that's better or worse. Coil Horizon does pretty significant damage. A lot of the grouping abilities, when they're Helminth abilities, have their range changed. I don't know how that's changed for pull, and because it works differently than it has for the past 8 years I've played Warframe, I don't know. But if we get a chance, we can look at that later. There's interesting comparisons to be made in the grouping abilities, but for now, let's move on to Polarize, which emits an energy pulse. This travels through the environment for a duration at a starting size, the radius, and it will hit enemies and remove some shields and armor from them. Now, the way this ability works, the last time I checked, I have to say now because of pull, is that it removes a flat, like a set amount of armor and shields, meaning it's not that good in the sense that when enemies have enough that it's a problem, it doesn't remove more, it doesn't really scale enough that it will remove a ton from enemies that have a lot, if that makes sense. This is why percentage-based armor removal especially is generally desired, because once enemies have enough that you want to remove it, the actual number of armor they have is absurdly high. You know, removing 4,000 sounds good, but it might be surprisingly inadequate against enemies of some levels. That was just a random number, by the way, I don't know. That being said, it's better than nothing, I suppose. And this does restore shields to you and your allies. I don't have a high opinion of this ability in its current form, though, because the thing I think it's best at is giving you shields, and Crush also gives you shields. For every enemy affected, as you lift them into the air, and then you're going to crush them down, you gain overshields, shields, and it can become overshields. This is pretty effective. This means you can get a kind of buffer of overshields over your health. Every frame has a set overshield cap of 1200, unless they're a weird exception. And so this lets you get some defensive measures built up. And Mag has a number of ways to keep enemies from easily being able to open fire already. So having a kind of backup buffer of shield is sufficient, I think, especially because it will probably hit a lot of enemies since Mag's other abilities so heavily incentivize range, especially Magnetize. So Crush, the damage can be perfectly fine. You can get Crush's damage to be pretty up there. I don't know why this one is so high. You see, it says the damages go from 500 to 5,000. What could I possibly have built that would make that damage so high? Yeah, maybe the scaling is weird or something. Why is that's odd? Anyway, yeah, it does modest damage. I don't know why it's 10 times higher than the base. I only have 300+% strength. But yeah, you can do moderately high damage with it. And the base radius it's all right. And so, yeah, it's not a bad just kill everybody at low levels ability. But at higher levels, this can be very useful. You get pretty meaningful shields per hit, especially with a bit of strength. You can see here I'm getting 84 shields and into overshields per enemy affected. So it could be pretty effective. As is the ability that sticks out to me is Polarize. I just feel like the armor reduction isn't sufficient at high levels, and Crush does shield restoring, if not better in every way, adequately. And this is also still 75 energy. Would you really rather not just Crush? Isn't there that one Crush augment that also removes armor anyway by a percent? I believe there is. And so there you go. Overall, though, yeah, Magnetize is a very, very strong ability, and I think Pull and Crush are like more than sufficient, basic bread and butter abilities. And a lot of Mag's augments are also pretty noteworthy as well. We don't have a great place to talk about those. Usually I start talking about them in the build section, which I think is where we're going now. Yeah, any other thoughts about Mag's default kit from you folks? Emily, welcome back. And Bionic Me, I know we briefly said hello before, but welcome back. Salmon the Fish, you said, why is the cursor so big and red? Salmon, I felt that it helped the audience follow along with where we were discussing something. I know some types of players, some types of thinkers, it is difficult to look at this and I'm talking and to see exactly where, what are we referring to, So I try to use it to point at things. Among the problems are that it can block text on the mod, but I don't think that's that bad. You could just put it like this. It sure makes it easier, at least, to tell which thing we're talking about. And I don't know, I've been putting a little bit more investment into making things followable on the stream in the past year. Tomorrow, the Friday streams we normally do, I've decided to slightly change to be, I'm going to try to deliver the stream in a way that assumes you know nothing about the game. So it's meant to be very accessible to people who don't play that game. I try to take the time for anyone who feels that way in these streams, in the build streams for Warframe and Genshin Impact, but that is hard. That's hard. And some people just feel intimidated by it's like they're slowing down discussion. We don't mind, ask away. That being said, I know some people don't ask because they feel that way. I have felt that way myself in other people's communities. So I do think it's good to leave, an environment where we can just do that. And I've also recently made the topic bubble, this little thing, which I can pop up over wherever I am on the screen to help people follow along with whatever it is we're talking about, so they can be as included as they possibly can. I think it's still a relative uphill battle for people to feel like they could just jump into this relatively complicated discussion of a frame's abilities and build trade-offs and stuff, but I would rather do what I can. I'm not sure it does much, but it's better than not doing anything. This is maybe a relatively niche topic, but I don't want it to be. I want to include as many people as we can. Okay. Yeah, I've grown curious before we exit this section. Let's see about Pull's Helminth range changes. I bet it's halved. It's probably halved. Yep, exactly halved. Still not terrible if you compare other pulling, like enemy grouping abilities. So pull here is 12.5 meters, and it's actually pulled up a few more because I typed the word pull, which is in their text. Larva is 8 meters, which is reduced from the version Nidus has. Airburst is 8 meters, which is reduced from the version Zephyr has. I'm curious about Coil Horizon. It's really large, but the pull isn't very long. 12 meters. Actually, pull is similar. Pull might be one of the larger ones nowadays. Although Coil Horizon and pull don't really hold enemies together for that long. Not sure that matters, but they don't. Coil Horizon does pretty significant damage, but it costs twice as much energy as Mag's pull. Anyway, that's kind of a topic for another time. But yeah, it's good. You know, if you want a Helminth grouping ability, it's good. It does that job. Consider that. And yeah, we'll definitely get a little bit more into augments once we jump into making abilities. Rusty, you said, before we get to Helminth powers, would you mind talking us through Citron's new Helminth power? I would say we're going to have to talk about that next week. That feels unrelated enough to Mag that unless we're considering including it in a build, I'd rather talk about that next week. We are currently on the schedule of doing these every other week, so we will have time to talk about that, but I'm not sure that's a good fit for today. Unless maybe it is. Asymptomatic, you said, Mag feels like she burns through energy for what she does. A lot of instantaneous or localized effects compared to buffs that affect Mag herself. One of the quibbles I have with frames less focused on gunplay through straightforward number tweaks compared to new functionality, such as sonar, prowl, whatever Citron has going on. Interesting. Yeah, Mag does have a lot of abilities that are you spend energy once and it only affects these enemies now. You know, you could say if you heavily abstract an ability like Magnetize, what does this accomplish? It kills the enemies that it affects. Like, more or less. They are going to die. They are dead. You just have to put bullets in there and they die. You could ask, why is that better than a damage buffing ability that makes you kill all groups of enemies you encounter for the next 45 seconds for around the same energy cost? Yeah, I mean, I think there are some advantages. This kills enemies in a very powerful way. There aren't a ton of damage buffs in Warframe that you're on a steel path, enemies have big chongo health, and you use one ability, and instantly, you know, pretty much every enemy in the affected area is condemned to die. They're not hurting you anymore. You know, you don't have to like have it up before you encounter them as per se. I do think that's good. And Magnetize can control the environment a little bit. It can linger and keep pulling enemies in and do a lot of damage to enemies over time. So it's not like it has no benefits. But that's a good point, Asymptomatic. I do think it's worth considering that this is a frame that may reward you if you want really active play. If you just want to very efficiently kill enemies, this could be considered to be a kind of outdated way of just dispatching enemies if that's all you want. Do you really need to do such active things? But you might very well want to. A similarity I would provide is to Gyre's Rotor Swell ability. You basically just buff yourself and you get chain lightning attacks for a long time. More or less, I would say they both get the job done. One of them is maintaining a timer and the other one is casting this a lot of times. This is certainly a lot more energy. I'm not sure it matters that's if one is better or worse, but yeah, that's something to consider. That's a good point, Ace, and a good place to start discussing mag build options. So we'll do that if that sounds okay. I'm going to split and we're going to talk about, yeah, the way I felt about mag is that this is a Warframe that is defined by that feeling of actively magnetically manipulating enemies. This is not a very passive frame, and not a frame that provides much if you want to just survive and do the thing. But that may not matter. It's not particularly difficult to stay alive if you're willing to use some abilities to do so. Here's something I've been enjoying on Mag, which uses Ibarra's Quiver. You don't get all the arrows, but you get the stealth arrow. So you have a very big range. You can only be invisible when you're in the bubble, but the bubble is big as it's gonna be, because I wanted max range for Magnetize. I feel that Mag is a Warframe that kind of rewards a good amount of setup. So being able to just be invisible in a bubble, and you have all the time in the world to magnetize a group of enemies, fire whatever awfulness you want to fire into the group, set up whatever weapons you want to set up. You might have seen in the loadout I'm using the Lightum. I'll talk about that in a sec. I found that very comfortable. Being able to crush enemies to get a buffer of health, so just in case anything errantly hits me, even if I'm invisible, I'm relatively safe. Has felt pretty good. And it means that I can kind of drop strength. I want high range, so overextended dock stat. But I built up the strength back a little, because Magnetize does give you a kind of a damage multiplier as enemies are inside Magnetize. So if it's too low, if your strength is too negative, I don't know how great that feels sometimes. I just wanted to make it kind of neutral. But Quiver isn't really affected. I don't really care for Pull. And Crush, you still get a meaningful amount of overshields per target if you have about neutral strength. With high range, you can hit a lot of targets, so it isn't necessary to gain too much per target. So I like that. And this seems like a good time to talk about augments too. The one I'm gonna kind of gloss over is Magnetize Discharge. This is a 45% range mod for Magnetize. Even if it was nothing else except that, I would probably equip this like 90% of the time I played Mag. It also lets you recast to detonate the Magnetize bubbles. I actually think one of the best things about that is just that you can get them out of the way. Kind of like frost globes, which you can't shoot through, you know? And, you know, it can do good damage, it can disarm them. But I just want very high range on Magnetize. You can see that my Magnetize radius is 13 meters. That's a very, very large bubble. Remember, only the radius, so it's actually like this long. It's big. Your Magnetize bubble is huge. And we'll go over a few other mag augments while we're here. Greedy Pull came up before. This lets you use Pull as a vacuum, basically. You would have a vacuum already, but Pull's range can be really high. I mean, this Pull with max range on this build is 70 meters, in which you can yoink a bunch of stuff to you. Now, as a Helminth ability, it's half the range, but it's still fairly large. Some people who want to use abilities to pull loot into them quicker, like people use Zaku or Limbo with their fourth abilities with high range to break containers and stuff. Pazak, absolutely. It can be helpful to bring Greedy Pull with those builds because it lets you cast an ability that is a longer range vacuum. Sure. I think this is the kind of augment that I love, actually. It's like, you know, if you want this, like it does nothing except that quality of life. You'd probably make a build where you'd want that quality of life and then use it, or you wouldn't, which I think that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Fracturing Crush. Crush casts faster. It's a very slow casting ability by default, but I'm invisible while I cast it, so I don't mind. But anyway, the armor of surviving enemies decreases by 75% and they're unable to move for 7 seconds. Those things are probably affected by strength and duration. Yes, they are, respectively. Yeah, this is fine. A question I've always had for this ability is why not just cast Magnetize on them and then they'll die if you shoot anything at them. But yeah, I mean, I still think this is effective for what it's doing. Sometimes Magnetize can behave funny in close quarters. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience. Sometimes if the walls are very thin, your projectiles will just fly into the wall, is what it seems like is happening as they're orbiting around. Maybe that's not what's happening. I'm not really clear. But anyway, yeah, this I don't think is bad. I'm just not sure I feel like it's entirely necessary. Quick shout out to a Polarize augment that I don't have Polarize on that build, but Counterpulse. This makes Polarize basically turn enemies off for 4 seconds if they have a weapon or they're a robot. So melee enemies can still hit you, but ranged enemies are jammed for a while. And that 4 seconds is based on duration. I just think that's so low. And again, you know, could you not just use Fracturing Crush, which disables enemies for a long time for not that much more energy? and you still get shields into overshields, and you heavily reduce their armor, and I don't know. This can be satisfying in that you could just quickly fist bump, and then all the enemies get their abilities turned off. But I'm not the biggest fan, and that's why. So yeah, we've definitely settled into a niche of mag as a very active controller type of Warframe, sets enemies up to die, and provides a contingency plan of overshields for herself if you want to play her that way. Get a nice smaller grouping ability as well. Maybe pull feels a little redundant to some people too. But that might be a little too simple for some people. I think that's a good starting point. But earlier, Asymptomatic, you said, what about using mind control so you have an allied magnetize target? That's... Sure. Yeah, we can... That is a series of alphanumeric characters that you typed into chat. Mind control allows a friendly magnetize. I did not get too much time testing to find practical use cases, though. Yeah, so the immediate question is, why does it matter? I guess, like... So enemies are still hurt by the stuff inside. Yeah, I guess of course they are. Your magnetize won't die. That seems relevant, I guess. They could follow you. That actually sounds kind of fun. I know you just recommend mind control in every single one of these, but I legitimately think that's not a bad idea. Let's try it. Over polarize in, let's see, config B. And we'll just duplicate the build I'm using over there as a starting point. Feed the Dusa here. There you are. How much damage can you add to the mind control target with that? I'm not sure if that will that do that. But yeah, the thing I was excited about is that the bubble, the mind controlled enemy will then, my hope is, walk around following you, grouping enemies up and keeping you pretty safe, maybe, depending on their behavior as they follow you. Might keep you quite safe. Can you copy mod configurations like from one slot to another? That'd be helpful here. Link config in chat. No. Actions. No. All right, whatever. I won't be lazy. We'll just manually bring it over. It's like all the range. Yeah, I think the walking bubble thing is actually incredible. That's, even if it isn't actually that useful, that's just wonderful. I want that. So definitely trying that. Pretty sure I did Constitution here. And it's Prime Continuity, Transient Fortitude, and Quick Thinking. Interesting. I'm not sure let's talk about that. But we can do it later. We'll bring it back up. Chat, make sure I bring it back up. This is I might use Rolling Guard instead. That's, in fact, that's enough. I don't know. I mean, if you get hit by damage that would kill you and you stagger, this can make you stagger if the hits of damage are too large. But you're in your stealth bubble. Maybe it's fine, but I don't know. Anyway, I kind of like the idea of Rolling Guard here. You can disable enemies so heavily, and then when you get caught with your pants down, you can just roll and have a moment to breathe. I feel like that's usually adequate. Very heavy control Warframes, I tend to like this, because you often don't need your survivability, and so just bring some that works in a pinch, maybe. The problem with this for me as a player is I just roll a lot. Like, I roll a lot already. And so sometimes it's not off cooldown and I die, but that's just me. If you can play to the strengths of this, I think it's fine. And the cooldown is not very long, so anyway. Okay, mind control. 70 seconds, even with just what we had. Ooh. I'm not sure we're changing anything. All right, let's go. Yeah. Arcanes for now. I don't know. Anything come to mind? Any frame with a lot of shields and a good way to get more shields that would want the survivability, I think this is always worth looking at. when your shield takes damage, you have a 3% chance to gain shield recharge. If this is what I'm familiar with it being, if they didn't change this since I last saw it, this makes your shield regenerate constantly, which makes you more or less unkillable for the duration because you get a shield gate back every second. The wording makes me concerned that this was changed to just be the shield recharge stat that makes you get your shields back faster after you don't get hit for a while, which is bad, I think. Often at higher levels, you won't. That will never happen. but if it's still that you regenerate shields constantly, that's good. I think that would be nice. And maybe something to synergize with a weapon would come to mind. Is Rolling Guard uncommon? Well, it's a rarity mod. Not that that means much. Are you asking if it's something people don't commonly equip? I don't know. I personally think it's sort of unnecessary a lot of the time. I think a lot of frames can just become tanky enough, easily enough, that the value of not needing to do anything to get the survivability is meaningful. If you're asking where it drops, that's a good question for the wiki. You should look up Rolling Guard, Warframe, and the Warframe wiki will give you exact drop locations. Synthron says it's from arbitrations, which sounds right to me. But I think this is a relatively niche thing. I'm sure some people love this and use it all over the place too. That's good. But I think a lot of frames can become tanky enough that it's this sort of no need. If this is enough to keep you alive, you could save a lot of mod space though. Just Audio, you said, what are some good frames that buff weapons or do well with guns? That's kind of outside the scope of this mag-focused stream. A lot of them, though. I would say broadly many. It kind of depends what you mean by do damage with guns, right? Like Mag's Magnetize makes pretty much anything you shoot into it very powerful in the sense that the enemies inside will die. But you might mean something more like you click a button and get a buff. Something like Rhino's Roar ability, or many frames, Frost, Volt, Ember, have augments for their first abilities that buff them with elemental damage. Or you could even say just any frame with something like Arcane Avenger, maybe a tanky frame. This can give a weapon massive critical chance. It's very, very easy to get damage buffs for weapons in Warframe. I would say almost every frame, like, more or less does that. There isn't really like a gunplay focused frame in that sense. That being said, you might want to look at Mesa, M-E-S-A, Mesa. Forgive me if you actually play Warframe a lot and you know who that is already, but I don't know how new to the game you are. Mesa is an example of a frame that is themed as a gunslinger. She doesn't actually buff your gun damage, notably. Pretty much every frame in the game does that. That's the game, you know? But that's a frame that comes to mind as someone noteworthy. If you wanted a gun-themed frame, she actually manifests her own weapons with one of her abilities. You may or may not enjoy that. But yeah, if you're just looking for a frame that buffs weapons in some way, I'm not exaggerating when I say literally all of them. I would be happy to talk about that more when we stream this time next week too, when we won't be focused on mag. I hope that helps. For an example, actually, of what I meant by mag, I'm using the Lightem on this loadout. This weapon is a single-shot, pretty weak pistol, but as it gets headshots, it charges up its transformed form, which does a lot of damage. It's a rapid-fire, explosive kind of submachine gun. And the problem, of course, is I just can't be bothered to get the headshots sometimes. Now, Mag's Magnetize physically pulls the bullets down toward the target when you shoot them. So if you shoot at the top of the Magnetize, the bullets will nearly automatically hit their head, and you can very easily get headshots while barely aiming at all, which makes it easy to transform this weapon into its more powerful form. So indirectly, Mag gives this weapon a gigantic damage buff, but it may not be what you meant. You might have meant like an ability that literally says guns do more damage. There's a lot of those. Again, I gave some examples, but yeah, doing it indirectly can be very powerful too. Those abilities wouldn't be as strong for this weapon as Mag's Magnetize, I don't think. That's kind of uniquely enabled by this. I'll try to show that a little bit as well. I love the light of the transformed form. What did I pick here? On a hit that's neither critical nor applies a status effect. Big bongo damage, stacks 3 times. Oh, but when you do that, it gives you a buff which affects all damage. Is that true? Chat, how's this work? So what I'm understanding is when you get a hit that is neither critical nor a status effect, the weapon gains a buff for all its shots that gives it probably high base damage, very high base damage. But to get the stacks of the buff, you need to do a hit that does neither crit or status, right? It's not that the damage only affects those things. It just, you only get the buff when you do those things, right? In which case that's ridiculously powerful. That's absurdly strong, yeah. And thanks to the follow, Audio. I'm happy that helped. Again, hopefully we'll be able to give more examples too. A quick note on, since we're kind of on weapons now, the miter. I have the miter because if a nullifier, a corpus nullifier, touches Mag's Magnetize, it destroys it. So I feel that Mag is unusually vulnerable to nullifiers, like even more than many other ability-dependent frames are. For example, you might look at frames like, Inaros or Nidus, who I would argue are unusually resilient against nullifiers. They have a ton of raw health that does not come from an ability, so they are very, very resilient to having their abilities turned off. You could look at other frames like Chroma, who isn't unusually squishy, but may be getting a lot of defenses from Vex armor. This is a frame that I don't want to get hit by a nullifier, but they have to literally touch me, and it's not like I become a piece of tissue paper when that happens, so it's like fine though. You follow me so far? Whereas Mag is a frame that literally is a piece of wet tissue paper if a nullifier does the thing, and it doesn't even have to touch me. It's like if it touches my nullifier bubble anywhere, I feel like that's bad. So I went for the nuclear option for dealing with nullifier bubbles, which is the miter. The miter blades have a 90% chance to just instantly destroy nullifier fields, and remember, that's per blade. So your multi-shot means that when you fire the miter, you fire multiple blades, each of which has a 90% chance. Your odds of not instantly destroying a nullifier field you shoot at are like less than 1%. For all intents and purposes, you always delete any nullifier field you shoot. That being said, this is also a nice weapon with Mag, because the miter blades have a lot of punch through, so they orbit inside Magnetize pretty well as well. It's a nice weapon to do both of those jobs at once. It will do the killing on the enemies in the bubble, while also dealing with the enemy bubbles. I'm saying bubble a lot. You get it. It's been a while since I updated this though. Let's pop a Forma on there. I ran out of Forma after all these long years. The prophecy has been fulfilled. Once upon a time, many moons ago, I was gifted 100 Forma, and it was actually only like 4 months ago. That's somewhat upsetting, and I am out of Forma now. So welcome to that. Welcome to that world that we're in. And there I have another one now, so let's plop it on. Asymptomatic, you got it. You better hold on. Were you the original culprit? Someone stop him. No. That fiend. 7 years ago, I was given a lot of Forma, and thus the prophecy has been fulfilled. I'm interested in gas. Because I'm not expecting this to do good damage except when it hits many enemies in a group, that's when gas would be powerful. Gas has had a weird run in Warframe where for a long time I felt like gas in its current state doesn't do that much damage for various reasons, but if you hit enough enemies and accumulate enough gas statuses, that can be powerful. In theory, it just requires a kind of impractical level of grouping enemies up. Recently, I've been using gas a lot more because some weapons that we currently have do such a ludicrous amount of overkill damage that no status effect is relevant except gas. So even if it doesn't do much, I might as well, the recent gun scythe is a weapon that comes to mind. But yeah, here, I don't know. Maybe we'll just try it. Viral is also really good because this is a very slash-focused weapon, an incredibly slash-focused weapon. Like 80% of the damage is slash. It's very, very slashy. So viral would make sense, but yeah. Again, I Pixel, since you asked, the scythe, where is it? The Chlorophyll. This is a weapon that my experience was this was doing so much damage with its shotgun or shooting mode that that I felt like it made more sense to go gas. Another factor that sometimes edges gas ahead is when enemies are very unlikely to get a status effect individually. The weapon hits one time on a group of enemies with rather low status chance. So if one random enemy gets viral, it's not going to make much of a difference. But if one random enemy gets gas and gasses all the other ones, that's not bad some of the time. So that helps make up for, I currently think gas's actual damage isn't that great. So yeah, I'll definitely play with the Chlorophyll more next time we stream Warframe. There's lots to say about that. Yeah, Pixel, it's a heavy attack build that I've built that way, so the normal scythe swings don't do much damage. Paraxel, you said, how do you deal with demolishers nullify pulses? I don't have experience with that. If you want to direct me to where I would suffer that fate, I would happily go check that out. I think I'm not qualified to be honest, I don't know which enemy that is. I don't often think of them as their names. So I'd be happy to go do that. We could literally just go embrace the abyss now. If you'd like, that's a good suggestion. It's not only nullifiers that will turn off your magnetize bubbles. Absolutely. It's those disruption enemies. Okay, let's go do... What's your favorite disruption, chat? Lua, maybe? The enemies you have to kill before they blow up the conduits. Yeah, so that's another point of discussion we could get into about... I might just not use mag during those missions. A frame that is so reliant on abilities, like active abilities, I'm wary of using. But that's me as a player. Like, I really enjoy having a frame specifically tailored for the task at hand. So for me, it's comfortable, adequate to say, oh, I just wouldn't use that frame then. But if you wanted to, yeah, I'm definitely open to suggestions for what folks would do. I'm holding you at gunpoint and saying you've got to play mag in a disruption mission. What would you like to? What will you do? And while we talk about that, Sliverito, thank you for the raid. Forks, our glorious host. I've been in fine form today, I'll have you know. Sliverito, go take a look if you like. Thank you for the raid. How was your stream? I know it's usually quite tiring before you come to a raid, let alone after. So if you would like, you should dip guilt-free, but I'd love to hear how your stream went too. I'm definitely in the same boat as Sliverito. I wouldn't use mag for disruption because not only is she herself not set up for it, I haven't built her for it. I don't think that her abilities are tailored to it. I'm a player who just has so many options for that mission. You know what I mean? There's so many people waiting in line for me to, do that mission with. But it's still worth discussing. There are plenty of times I don't want my abilities disabled, and I want to do a disruption mission. If there's suggestions people have, I would love to hear about that. Absolutely. Praxel, you said maybe do Apollo, both Nullifier Corpus and Demolishers. Apollo on Sedna? Is that on Sedna? Oh no, Apollo is on... Yes, that's the one on Lua. Cool. And it has Nullifiers too, that's a good call. Cool, we'll do that for a little bit. We might break first, but then yeah, we'll do this. Chat, people coming in from Sliverito's stream, this is our mag build day. We've been going through every frame in the game and doing these every other week. I still stream Warframe, the off weeks, we just play generally. But so today we're doing mag, and in 2 weeks the plan would be to do Mesa. 2 weeks after that we'll do Mirage, famously my least favorite frame, so in a month I will rest in peace. But anyway, Mag. And I was talking about how I think Magnetize is really strong, but Mag is a very active caster. You know, you don't have much insurance if nullifiers appear. Not only do you have little defense if your Magnetize bubbles and other crowd control go down, nullifiers that just touch a Magnetize bubble break it. So if you have massive Magnetize range, it's extremely difficult to keep them from getting destroyed, which is why I've taken the kind of the nuclear option for getting rid of bubbles, which is the Miter with neutralizing justice. With this and multi-shot, it basically instantaneously destroys any nullifier bubbles in its path. This is the kind of thing I would only pull out for a frame like this, where it kind of turns off her entire kit if there are nullifiers around. So we thought we'd demonstrate that a bit. And Paraxel asked about demolishers, the enemies in Disruption that I didn't know them by name, but the ones that disable your abilities. What might you do if you were against them? I wouldn't bring Mag, but that doesn't mean let's just give it a go and see what happens. Some people might want to. So we'll do that. I think we will do it after the break today, which will be now. But welcome back, folks. Hope you'll enjoy yourselves for the latter half of the show, another about 45 minutes or so that we have together today. Pixel, welcome back. Silverito, you said it was good you were messing around with Citron in her defense. She feels very solid. I agree. I think that Citron's third ability, the crystal you deploy, that then makes anyone who shoots enemies of yours get status support, is very powerful with specters. It gives them the ability to kind of scale their damage against like heavily armored enemies because they get backup, they get heat status effects mostly. I've had really good results with deploying a ton of specters in like underpopulated steel path missions, or when I play duos with my partner. You can just deploy a bunch of random enemies that they've got good health and damage output, but they do nothing to armored enemies because they can't deal with the armor. And then you give them Citron's crystal and just a dip, they do pretty good. Like that's not bad. So I've had pretty good results with that. I think Citron is definitely a specialist in that niche. I agree, really, really good for that type of mission in a way that most other frames are not as well. Running the Toxin also procs corrosive Archon mod is cool too. I didn't think of that. That's sick. Oh no. Oh no. Oh my goodness, that's great. I gotta write that down. I can't believe I didn't think of that. That's glorious. Silverito, that's class. Incredible. Well, I know what we're doing this time next week. Folks, we seem to have been given a oh no. A tactical airdrop, 41 Forma bundles. The prophecy has been fulfilled. Jesus. Asymptomatic, thank you very much. I patch notes, but Asymptomatic here in chat. Legend has it that Asymptomatic gifted me 30 some Forma bundles, 35 Forma bundles, many moons ago, and I used them all, and now we will use more. This isn't the type of Forma use that you might see from other creators. Some people just have a ton on one thing, perfectly fine, but not my taste. We just really build out that many weapons. I mean, I'm pretty much always in the middle of building out yet another tool for some ultra-specific frame. And so I really do go through them a lot. It's maybe only been like 4 or 5 months until that I took to use them up. So thank you very much, Ace. It really does help. I know you know it does because you watch me use them for every Thursday. But yeah, I appreciate it. Again, it's probably only going to take like half the year for me to, I mean, but we are catching up. It's like eventually I'll just have built everything that I would want to build and be kind of caught up a bit. But I go through a lot of Forma because all we do here is make builds all day. Anyway, we'll break for now after I catch up on chat a little more, and then we're just going to go do Apollo on Lua. Praxel suggested it as a node that has nullifiers, which we can counter with the Miter, and also the Demolishers, which will disable Warframe powers, and I can't shoot them with the Miter. So that's a great example node. We'll go do that. I'll see you later, Silverito. Hope you had a good time. And again, you've caught me at a slightly odd time. It's in the middle of the stream, but I hope, folks, you'll enjoy watching us give that a go. Again, I might not have used Mag in that situation, but Shalstev, you said, actually a relevant issue to you. You have a challenge account that's no trade, no platinum, mag only. That's incredibly specific. Are you serious? And you're specifically doing that one thing right now? Yeah, I mean, I believe you. I'm just saying that's remarkable. That's an incredible coincidence. I guess it is relevant to you then, isn't it? Wow. Um, we'll have to deal with high level disruption eventually. Wow. Bars, you said, can you tell me who's better, Mesa or Zaku? Neither of them is better, of course, because that could mean anything. I'll give you a quick elevator pitch for Mesa and Zaku, but that's the best I can do now. What I would highly recommend, Bars, is that you look them up in the wiki. You can read their abilities and get an overview of them there. If you catch me during a stream where it doesn't say I'm specifically talking about Mag, like it does today, I would also be happy to talk about them more in detail. But for now, I can try to help a little bit. Mesa is a very gunslinger-themed Warframe. She manifests her own pair of pistols, which have a kind of unique, somewhat auto-aiming mechanic. Some people really like that, but it is quite different from normal, like, first-person or third-person shooter gameplay. It's kind of hit or miss. It might be worth looking up someone playing Mesa on YouTube and just seeing that, and you'd probably know if you'd like it. But if auto-aim sounds like something you'd enjoy, that is very powerful. It's very distinct. I would want people to know that going into Mesa. Zaku, I would describe as kind of a spellcaster Warframe. Zaku's first ability, which gives things void damage, is pretty powerful offensively and defensively. You get a good gun buff. It makes enemies have bullet attractors around them, which will kind of wall you from being shot. Enemies behind the enemies with the bullet attractors will try to shoot you, and the bullets will hit the bullet attractor and not hurt you. That can be effective. Zaku has some weird survivability stuff, but a lot of abilities, if you want a kind of spellcaster frame, I think Zaku is probably going to be more enjoyable for you than Mesa. That's my elevator pitch for now. But I would look at their abilities and maybe see a bit of gameplay for each. If you catch me this time next week when I'm streaming, I will happily play both of them and demonstrate that too. But for these streams, I gotta keep going with Mag. We'll take our break. I hope that's helpful given the time I have. And away we go. A few thank yous to folks for supporting the show before we break and then go play some Disruption, which will probably get me killed, but that's fine. It's good for discussion. Ragnabar, Sam and the Fish, and Emily, thank you for the recent subs. Enjoy your time in the gun ports of our glorious vessel. And thank you for supporting the show. Without your support, I would have to stop doing this. So thank you very much. It really means a lot. And thanks to all the new follows, Just Audio you followed earlier. I hope you've been enjoying lurking away. And thanks to Sliverito for the raid. You had good timing in the sense that we're right in the middle of the show. I just hate to pause and take a break right after people came in, but hopefully you'll enjoy when we get back. Talk to you all in just a few. Hello and welcome back to my Twitch ARRchive Parley, the part of the show where I entertain you by doing some Q&A while I hit the restroom in real time. So this is Paz Zandy here. Recorded this right before the show, so get a drink, stretch your legs, and listen to this question from Cheat Needler, who asks about why do you always say that your stream is about making builds? You just play Warframe all the time. It seems very focused on Warframe. Why do you always insist that it's about making builds? Okay. What to call this? I'm gonna answer my stream focus thing because I stream other things more than I stream Warframe technically, but I do still think there's something here. Having enough examples is kind of what I think is the main problem or thing to discuss here. I stream Warframe every Thursday, and on Friday we have sort of a wild card day, introduce you to something I'm enjoying playing. And we make builds, work on builds in Genshin Impact on Mondays. That's the schedule at the moment. So yeah, I mean, I overall, in my work, making videos on YouTube too, I don't spend much of that time playing Warframe. It is pretty objectively not focused on Warframe, sure. That being said, when talking about build systems in games in general, it's difficult not to focus a bit on the few ongoing build games that I play. I don't make builds in any games that receive, frequent updates, except for Warframe, Genshin Impact, and a few others that I'm not covering on my channel or professionally. So I don't have a lot of examples of that. I can give you many examples of other games I enjoy making builds in, but not what I would call kind of ongoing experiences. I don't have a lot of examples of that. No one has a lot of examples of that. It takes a lot of time to be acquainted with those games, enough to say good things about them. I would say perhaps the hardest logistical aspect of what I'm trying to make my career is that I need an amount of examples that seems a little impractical of this type of game. I would like, this won't happen, so we're just saying what would I like in a perfect world. 3 more Warframes, basically. I have Warframe, Genshin Impact. I'd like maybe 3 more. A game that I have seen some close friends of mine and also some of you on Twitch and my community have said maybe would work would be Destiny 2. Has kind of come a ways in terms of its build options. Recently, Destiny 2 made all of its weapon mods, which are not really the same as what they are in Warframe, but anyway, freely available, where they had been quite limited before. That was one of the reasons I wasn't playing Destiny 2. So maybe, I'll be honest that when I first played Destiny 2, I didn't have a great impression of it. I would largely be trying it again because I'm pretty desperate for a game that I think would do a good job for discussing builds frequently, right? And exactly what would be a good fit for streaming is also different. Like, games that will be a good fit for discussing on a stream are not necessarily the same as games that might fit the bill for you, the audience member, or just a player. Not to humble you, audience member listening right now, but your needs just aren't as strict. Like, a game can just have a good build making experience, and that's good. It may not make good entertainment. That's kind of the point I was trying to make. So I don't know, it's hard. I definitely think that's a real problem. You are mistaken that I do mostly stream Warframe, but I don't think it's wrong to say that that is an issue I have, just not because it is the majority of what I make. And it would be fine if it was. I just don't really want that kind of career for reasons that are truly a topic for another time. But yeah, definitely, if you have games you want to suggest, I'm sure some people in chat right now are already commenting, oh, try this game, try that game, for an example of the thing you're saying you need more of. Recommend them, sure. Just keep in mind how costly it is to try one, right? I have to be quite confident that it will, provide some value and that I'll like it. All this isn't worth the trouble if I could just get a normal job. I'm doing this because I like doing this, and I want to make money doing something I really enjoy, of course. Anyway, just keep in mind that there's a big cost to trying one of them. So just because I might not be really high on an idea you suggest, it doesn't mean it isn't a good suggestion. Like, go ahead and suggest them. Just please understand that I'm not going to try like 90% of what people suggest. I just can't. But I'll try. I'll try to try them. With that, I'd say that's what I have to say. If you want to submit a question for these segments, you can do so using a link I'm posting in chat right now. They're tied to days of the week, so if you're around this time normally and you tune in the next time we stream on a Thursday, that's when I will answer your question. So please submit one there. It gives me something to talk about during the break too. With that, on with the show. A few other quick thank yous to folks for supporting the show before we continue. One to Eddie Stardust, my most recent new patron. Thanks very much for joining me as a $9 patron. I do a service called Parley where you get a kind of custom podcast for $9 a month, so you got that. Those are free for everyone to watch, by the way. If you just want that and you don't want your own custom one, you could just watch them for free. You don't have to pay for that. There are those. And yeah, Eddie, I'm looking forward to yours joining the roster. Asymptomatic, thank you for the recent $52.10 tip. You also recently patroned me for more. I know you get a lot out of these streams, but it means a lot to have your support. You also recently gifted me 41 Forma bundles. 41 Forma bundles? 41? Yeah. 41 going once, going twice. Sold. 41 Forma bundles. Just a quick chat was responding to my ideas about ongoing games to play for build examples. Emily, you said Destiny 2 is a very strange game. I'm unsure how well it fits. Warframe and Genshin Impact are also very unusual games compared to their peers. So I almost think that's a good sign, actually. But we'll see. You're right. Even the much earlier version of Destiny 2 I played like 4 years ago, was a very strange game. So I guess it was a less strange game, you could argue. Yeah. And the intersection of an ongoing game and build experiences is tricky. Both of them require a huge sort of upfront cost. So yeah, that's hard. It will take some work. Probably I'm just gonna have to find some. Maybe we could make one somehow. Anyway. Pixel, you said to specify or clarify in a sentence, the goal is deep build systems with meaningful choices in ongoing games. With the caveat that that's, you and I both know that's not enough to explain to most people, but you probably know what I'm looking for. Yes. I think there's something valuable about being able to roll into a game and you can enjoy fiddling with builds without a bunch of build up. I think that is uniquely valuable. So we're gonna do disruption on Apollo. I'm not gonna do the steel path, I don't think. We're gonna do a populated one, and the focus of this is just to see the impact of the demolishers versus nullifiers. And I'm gonna focus mostly on shooting nullifiers with my my miter to disable them, and then we'll see the impact of the demolishers disabling abilities. Just to give an idea of a oh good lord, okay, my eyes. um, the oh okay. Well, that was a wild ride, wasn't it? Thank you, Warframe. Very cool. Just to see a no. Just to see a an example of, oh no, is it gonna put me back in that squad? Oh boy. An example of the impact of having a frame that is very uses very active abilities to stay alive or affect the battlefield. And of course, we also get to test out our mobile mind control beacon. I actually think that's more relevant here too, because it would be quite difficult to keep an ally alive under these conditions normally. Like, enemies are quite low level for my account. So normally a target of Magnetize would die quite fast, but with mind control they can be an ally, so we'll see. I have no companion, and to set a good example, I'm literally not even going to play the mission with no companion. Sorry, squad. Classic Warframe is you queued into a mission and disconnected twice. A good chance to talk about companions, don't you think? Yeah, I like I've liked Death Cube in the past. This is who I had equipped before, because Magnetize can make it very, very easy to get assists for Energy Generator and Synth Deconstruct. Basically, this just means the Death Cube has to hit them at all, and they'll get an assist. Now, here the Hellstrom is equipped, but I don't think I'd pick that. The reason is that it might the missiles might not reach the target fast enough before they all horribly die in a tornado of death in Magnetize. I think I want a weapon that hits a lot faster than that, but I do want a weapon that interacts with Magnetize, which is the Volklock. I guess we'll talk about the Volklock. This weapon is basically the Lanka, but a sentinel weapon. The Lanka is an electromagnetic slug sniper rifle. You charge it up and then it fires a projectile travel time bullet with a lot of punch through that will orbit inside Mag's Magnetize. This is one of the classic weapons for doing that with. The Volklock is literally the Lanka, but a sentinel weapon. It's not exactly the same, but it, more or less, that's what it is. I happen to have a modestly invested one here, which will do very, very good damage to enemies in the bubble. Now, it will probably reach them in time, but this also has really low projectile fire rate, excuse me. Like the lowest fire rate of any weapon in the game, probably. Very, very low. 0.36, so it shoots about every 3 seconds, I guess is what that would mean. Which, but we'll try it and you'll get to see. Certainly when you roll up to a group of enemies and magnetize them successfully, all in a group, they will definitely die if they get hit by the Volklock, especially at this level. Okay. With much delay, on we go. Playing a Warframe mission during a stream where we're discussing builds, this almost never happens in this community. Just, I mean, I come to these streams for some quality build discussion, not for playing the game. That's what we have the every other week streams for. Ridiculous, you know? But it makes sense here, so there you go. Yoink. Yoink. We can probably see some Volklock action against these enemies. What? Look at how big these bubbles are. We gotta do our mind control thing now. So we'll hit. I need more energy. Death Cube, if you would. It was maybe foolhardy of me to not, like, bring a source of energy. Pisley, you said, what is all this jumping around? Where are all the mod cards? I'm getting dizzy. Understandable. We normally don't do this. You've not been led to expect such a thing from my streams. Energy drain is not what I wanted to see. For the sake of demonstration, let's just do this. That guy's got to magnetize, but I think I failed to mind control before they died. No Xeneric? I did not equip Xeneric. That is correct. Am I a fool for doing such a thing? Indeed. You might argue. Am I going to fail to kill this enemy in time? Probably so. I am indeed. Okay, somebody literally just left. So you can see the problem right now is that the weapons on my build are not equipped to start up. Like when I don't have a lot of resources, when I don't have the build rolling, none of those weapons were designed to be good in that situation. I have my heavy weapon, as ever, and that's fine. That, you know, you could consider that adequate. But for all their synergy, a lot of the weapons that I brought in the loadout are not suitable to when the build is not up and running. To be fair, the whole point of doing this is we're demonstrating this loadout in a situation it's not intended to be any good in. It's not supposed to do basically anything relevant in this type of mission. This is mostly just to demonstrate the Demolisher thing, which if it's hard enough to demonstrate, I'll probably just give up. But Proaxel, since you mentioned it, I also wanted to ask for your input as well. How do you feel about it? I mean, when I say I don't think it matters because why would you use mag in such a mission? What do you think about that? Is that good enough for you, or do you feel like, well, no, I really want to do that for various reasons? That's okay. You can want that. That's valid if you want it to be. I'm just curious what you think. Since you brought it up, I hope you don't feel like I'm putting you on the spot. I just want to know what you think. There you get to see the Nullifier bubble getting instantly destroyed by Miter. Alright, it's Versa in the butt. It will definitely destroy these before I can kill them, so there you go. Yeah, for lack of any squad members, this build just has no tools to kill those enemies. So I could just take out my heavy weapon and kill them all, but we basically can't test it that way. And this is constantly a problem in Warframe for me. It is hard to test things because either you just play a loadout that doesn't have problems with the mission and you never need to check any of that stuff, or the mission doesn't fire anyway. You know, you just can't complete it like this. But this spread of weapons is quite combo-y, right? It is, you would expect it to be bad in a situation where you just need to shoot and kill things. The Zenistar was in here, and I feel like it shouldn't be. I get the idea. You could put down a field that will control an area. This could keep you safe because you could deploy it in an area that, you know, like you don't want enemies to hurt you in, so you don't have to magnetize them before they get to you. Again, I hope you can see how I found the idea of stealth appealing, because it lets you set all that stuff up without worrying about getting hit. I definitely think that if you're going to survive with a lot of crowd control, one thing that's helpful is to have something that keeps you safe before you can target enemies. You know, an enemy pops around the corner, they begin shooting you. You can magnetize them and then they're dealt with, but you probably will get shot a few times unless you have unbelievable reaction time, right? So something like Quiver, but you could definitely also solve it with, yeah, I guess like you could put down the Zenistar field in a place you want some breathing room. But yeah, in this example, the idea of mind control to have a walking magnetize is a cool one. I think we might need to demonstrate that in a type of mission. I don't know. I mean, the downfall of all testing in Warframe is if the mission isn't populated, that completely changes the game compared to if there were 4 people there, you know? There's not really a way to get a good... I mean, if I had to assume that I have no allies on public queue, I would change everything about how I play Warframe, you know? So there just isn't really a way to demonstrate things like this. I'm not sure you should change everything just because you would assume there's nobody in the mission with you, you know? I do have loadouts that are designed for that. I was talking earlier about Citron, who I think is quite strong in that role. You can deploy a bunch of Spectres, deploy her Crystal, and then they all get status support. But in this case, I would say that was a great example of why trying to demonstrate these things isn't usually useful. Usually I don't even bother because it's usually not useful. I could either just ignore the loadout and use a heavy weapon and it would work, or, you know, I have no control over whether the situation that we want to test will happen. Anyway, Proaxel, you responded. I also knew Mag is far from the best to bring into disruptions, of course. I just figured you had some trick up your sleeve for dealing with heavy units like Demolishers. Sure, and I think that's a good segue into, you know, briefly, the heavy weapon is usually what I turn to for that stuff. If you find yourself in a situation where, like we were just in, we were trying to test out a thing in Disruption that, within reason, you should be able to do, but for whatever reason, there was just nobody in the mission, or somebody queued in and left because they saw we failed. Generally, what I turn to is a heavy weapon in that situation. And for the sake of demonstration, I think it would be good to use my stealth one. And for real, Zeneric, I think you want the energy ahead of time. And demonstrate that more. I'll just use my heavy weapon more aggressively to deal with the incoming Demolishers if I need to. Fine of me, you said, I'll once again give my recommendation for Disruption Tech, especially now that we have a Prime version. The Hystrix on-demand cold procs are amazing against Demolishers. That's smart. If we do a second go, I'll definitely do that. Having a way to slow the enemy is a great idea, yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, Proaxel, I would say more or less my solution would be a heavy weapon as a fallback, or in this loadout, you know, the Lightem should be able to do that job, but only if I have time to get it ready, which I didn't. Another reason, you know, I often shy away from gameplay examples is because when I'm doing them distracted on a stream, all of you and me, when I'm not distracted by streaming, are better at playing Warframe than this, you know? So I'm not sure how useful it is as an example. But sometimes I feel like it's worth trying, and so here we are. Yeah, we have the miter for the nullifiers, but I want to find a situation where we can see the Demolishers impact. Maybe I'll try putting a stealth arrow on whatever, you know, lock thingy we put the key into, and then you'll get to see... Yeah, there we go, perfect. So I'll put down a stealth arrow, and we'll see if the Demolisher gets close enough anyway, whether that gets destroyed. I'll put down a few of them. Plop. Plop. Oh lord, he's coming. Oh lord, he is coming. Oh lord, he is stuck. So I'm pretty sure that pulse is disabling the stealth bubbles. So you can see that when that happens, my loadout is quite naked. Without my buffer of overshields that I normally use. I'm glad we finally got a good example. You see, I just cast Crush twice, and now I have max overshield. So I do have that little buffer. But besides that, this loadout is a little bit pants down in that situation, which I think is fine. Again, I think when this is playing to its strengths, that won't matter. But there definitely isn't a whole bunch you can do if all of your area effects are disabled. You could kind of decide for yourself if you like the stealth is worthwhile then, or would I rather try the mind control thing? I think we might need to do Steel Path to see the mind control Magnetize bubble. I think that's a cool idea, so we should try that. Oh yeah, I'm covering the HP. It can be hard to decide where to move sometimes when we're doing this. Glorious. But yeah, we should definitely put into the toolkit that the Hystrix is a good disruption tool. What I would do with that probably is find a frame that I felt like had synergy with the Hystrix in some way, and then see if there's a frame that I feel like has synergy with the Hystrix that also is like notable for disruption, and then maybe I would put them in the running among other utility for disruption. But one of the goals of this series overall is, yeah, to collect a sort of list of things that feel good for disruption missions. And maybe listing things where a frame feels a little worse isn't so bad. We could pencil mag in for, like, disruption, maybe not so much, not a bad thing to do. Because I think that's the actionable part of this in some way. It might be useful because you might have a frame you want to play, but you're not quite sure where it would benefit you to play them. Or you're looking at getting a frame. Maybe a newer player is trying to consider getting a frame, but they want to make sure they feel relevant to missions they think are hard, or noteworthy. So having a better understanding of that feels relevant. Yeah, maybe I'll start writing down, where are places I don't want to be playing this loadout. And yeah, disruption feels noteworthy. But these enemies are also of a low enough level that, it doesn't matter that much. You can see once it's charged, the Lightem does fine at killing, a random Demolisher too. Zach, you said, bah, I think you only need Mage's Lockdown. Yeah, but you wouldn't lose anything by having more tools, so I might as well recommend them. And then if players feel like, I don't need all that stuff, I'm just going to bring, Mage's Lockdown. That's perfectly fine. But it's better for me to recommend more stuff. I agree. I think this is a relatively general mission type. Again, like, I feel like in this loadout is quite unsuitable for disruption. And yet it's mostly sufficient to just deploy a heavy weapon as long as you deal with your survival-based area of effects, like stealthing or whatever, aren't in the path of a Demolisher. But it could be hard to know. The area is, reasonably large that they dispel in, so. Warframe isn't necessarily a game where it's hard to have a piece of tech relevant to the type of mission, but I do still think that having a lot of options is relevant. Something else I'm interested in doing once we go through most frames is for people that want it, and I often want it, to make sort of the fewest loadouts possible that densely contain like a bunch of tech for kind of every type of mission. If you wanted the fewest possible loadouts that had the widest possible utility without really losing much, what loadouts might that be? The densest loadouts, you could think of it that way. Yeah, I think the last thing to do is just to do a Steel Path, random Steel Path mission and try to show the allied Nullifier bubble thing. I think that's a fun idea. I also want to refresh my memory of what happens when a Nullifier bubble, when the enemy that is a Nullifier bubble is destroyed. Sorry, Magnetize bubble, not Nullifier. What happens? Like, it goes away, but how? When? If the initial target dies while magnetized, the field destabilizes and explodes at the end of its duration. I'm reading the wiki. Doing some damage. Each time an enemy gets hit by the damage ticks inside the bubble, the absorbed damage gets added to the explosion damage. Blah, 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 but then it goes away. So the point of having a mind-controlled magnetized target is that they'll last for the whole duration and kind of walk around with you is the hope, I think, which might keep you very safe. So let's give that a try. On what kind of mission? I kind of need these guys. Steel Path Defense, but it probably won't be populated. Exterminate seems fine. Oh, it's populated. That's a surprise. Okay. Hell yeah. Cool, okay. Time to find a victim. So you can see here, because it's a higher level Steel Path mission, these enemies will survive plenty of the time. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to target the one that has the Magnetize on it. That's a concern I have. Like, it's that guy. Oh, he died immediately. Okay. That guy. Got him. Okay. Yeah, so you do kind of have to have an enemy that's alone. And then... I don't know. Oh, that might not work. Let's see. Magnetize guy, come hither. I think my ally doesn't know that this enemy is magnetized. Come with me. I think that might cancel magnetize. Here, let's see. Nope, magnetize is still there. Is it still active? Does it still work? I guess so. No. No? I think no. That's weird. It becomes like a... As if it... Is it affecting enemies, maybe, once you do that? I don't know. Or maybe Magnetize is just wearing off and the visual effect is lagging behind. Ace, you said the stark difference in Magnetize's duration and mind controls, 15 seconds and 45 seconds respectively, is a bit awkward, though ultimately recastable. Can you cast Magnetize on your mind controlled target after you mind control them? That's something to try. Look at the damage on the Lightem. Hell yeah. That was spicy. You said the damage component falls off without further jank. When you say without further jank, asymptomatic, we've come this far. Further jank is our middle names. Not sure who I'm referring to when I say our there. What like what? You got anything else in mind? Something like the Zenistar's disc would persist, for as long as it does not collide with a wall. There are many, many walls in Warframe. Indeed, okay, yeah, that is not practical, I agree. It turns out Warframe has literally several walls, like some of the most, it's one of the walliest places in all of gaming. So that's a concern. So you're saying if you Zenistar disc an enemy, if I magnetize an enemy, Zenistar disc an enemy, and then mind control an enemy, the Zenistar disc will stay flying around the enemy after Magnetize ends until the Zenistar disc hits a wall. That's ridiculously convoluted. But good to know that that's how it works. If that's what you meant. That's incredible. That is an engineering nightmare of mechanics. You're getting to see a little bit of the miter's damage with gas. Kind of low. Certainly if you hit a group of enemies, it's fine, you know, for applying a lot of damage. but not exceptionally high, to be sure. And you can also see something I mentioned earlier about how sometimes Magnetize has wonky targeting mechanics in weird environments. Sometimes it seems like, shouldn't my bullets be being magnetized, but they just didn't seem to hit. Maybe along the path they were being drawn, something was in the way, something like that. This weapon does so much damage. And you can see that Mag is maybe just like more trouble than it's worth when enemies are staggered like this and you're moving from group to group. Is it really the best way to approach that situation to bring Magnetize in its abilities? Pull is maybe kind of good in that situation, but lots of frames can do something like that. Pull now has really good range though. Man, wow. Yeah, Pull has incredible, impressive range now that it actually pulls enemies into a clump. That's crazy. Because most of the other grouping abilities have their range like halved or something. So if we were comparing them, you remember earlier we were looking at these in the helmet system? And Pull has like the highest range of... maybe Mag is really exceptional at pulling groups of enemies together. Okay, we gotta, as we always do, I always make a note document for these streams. So good for, bad for... disruption, demos, dispel your area abilities and can't be mitered to destroy them. That effect like nullifiers can. And I also wanted to mention pull. Now groups enemies tightly, reliably, very high range for that ability compared to competition. Yeah, pull is the unsung hero of this stream. When did they change that? Anyway, now it groups enemies very tightly, and the range is really good for an ability, like really, really good. In fact, so good that I kind of want to see that again. Other helmet abilities before we go. I guess we'll wind up here. Kind of an anticlimax for the end of the stream, but you know how I feel about climaxes. That came out wrong. Ace, I really like the way you presented the something like the Zenosar's Zisk will persist for as long as it doesn't collide with the wall. There are many, many walls in Warframe. It turns out, yeah, there's quite a few. So won't this... I mean, it only lasts for a second, but like a group of enemies in a big room, and all you have to do is to give them one of these. That is a potent enemy grouping tool. That's 70 meters of enemy grouping. Yowza, that's something. That's something to see. Do you really need more than a second to blow something up? No, you totally don't. Again, I personally think it's not usually a huge drawback that these longer range pulling abilities, Coil Horizon is kind of like that too. They have really good range compared to other pulling grouping abilities, but they don't keep the enemies grouped up, which I think I agree you generally don't need. I think it's generally adequate to just annihilate them with other damaging abilities. But that's really powerful. That groups enemies, and that's in... Is it in a cone or is it in a radius now? That's not entirely clear. I guess I could test that quickly. I'll turn away from enemies and do this. It's in a wide cone, but still, I mean, that's still really good. Wow, what is gyres? The base radius is only 12 meters. Okay, wow. Yeah, no, the mag one is significantly higher. Wow. Okay, so that's quite noteworthy. I didn't know that. See, we got to do these. I can't believe I would have not known that. Do I want quick thinking or do I want rolling guard after all this? Does Magnetize work with beam weapons? Pazak, I don't believe so. I think the beam weapons will act as normal, if I remember correctly. Beam weapons will just behave as if there wasn't a Magnetize bubble there, I believe. Yeah, definitely looking forward to talking about the Hystrix more. Ace, you said it's nice for indirectly allowing impossible element combinations. For example, heat for Cascadia Flare, while still using radiation. The Hystrix needles are not themselves breadwinners, though. It's true. I think that the upshot with the Hystrix is that it has to provide enough utility to offset the fact that it doesn't do particularly high damage itself. Neither is it so low, I don't think. But I just personally think that's a good note. I think the Hystrix damage is fine, but it's got to be valuable enough that it's giving you the status that having like kind of average damage is not really inadequate, nor is it particularly high. Remember, those are not steel path enemies, which have more health, but they were that level of armor, and it ripped through them, sure. But yeah, it's nothing insane, that's all. You are still shooting a single target in Warframe, a game known for having more than just a few targets. So, yeah, it's a trade-off. Anyway, it came up a lot of times during the stream. I hope you saw why I like the Lightem. It makes it easy to get headshots because the bullet will go right down at the enemy's head. I felt like a lot of times I was seeing it go through enemies, so just for my sanity, I'm going to do this. Yeah, so you can see I'm just shooting generally near the top, and even though the Lightem is a hit scan weapon, or is it a slug-based weapon? Anyway, it gets magnetized to their heads, and I actually got a lot of headshots in there, even though I didn't really aim. So yeah, that's something. Cool. I think that's it for now. Which means we go on to the most important part of the stream. The fashion. Mag fashion. I mean, how could we forget? How could I have tried to dip without talking about mag fashion? I would never. I didn't do that. See, here we are. The Magnuma skin. Numa Numa A. I forget exactly that song. It's been a while. Okay. Mag does have Void Shell, which I haven't played around with that much. Void Shell lets you change the textures as well. But I don't think that Mag's model is very compelling. I feel that it is too plain. You're a ambiguous spacesuit, not enough visual design for my taste. There's just not. I look like a basic spaceman instead of a fantasy space ninja, which is what I like. On the other hand, the Numa skin I'm a big fan of, but it has the challenge of being highly metallic. Most of the channels are metallics. You can see here I largely hand-waved that by using no color, which is not very brave, but it would be hard to use color because that's the, I mean, like, meh, you know, you can absolutely do like a bunch of metallics. You could do probably like a dark copper could work okay here. That's fine. You could work with that, sure. Sure. That being said, there are also some parts of the metallic that, to my great chagrin, are also not metallic on Mag's sort of frontal thing. you can see that these are not metallic. These are always not metallic. So you could do like some red, a splash of color or something. Oh no, but it's metallic in the back. Yeah, so that's the problem. Is let's say I make that red, you can see that on the helmet it's metallic, but on this part down here it doesn't read as metallic, which I find very jarring. Some people don't care about that. I find it very jarring. To my eye, the effect is erased if it's grayscale. So I don't really notice, it doesn't stick out to me when it's like that. The color is so neutral, I guess. But like here, way too yellow on the lines on the legs while looking, I still don't really like that color that much on the metallic part. So you could fiddle around. I would imagine maybe something that doesn't kill me, but I still don't like it. So I don't know. But personally, I like the Numa skin more than normal mag because I feel like it cuts a more aggressive silhouette. Asymptomatic, you said, I like a good aggressive silhouette. Cosmetics that add some bulk and bury the original frame underneath is my preference. I feel pretty much the exact same way. I've actually said before that not something almost exactly like asymptomatic, you said, non-recognition is a sign of success. That is often how I feel. I often want to make a frame that people don't know what frame that is when they look at it, which is maybe not the ideal mindset for a career entertainer about a game, but what are you gonna do? Mag, I think it's kind of hard. I covered up a lot of the body with this rather infamous, incredibly cool looking Syandana. I think that she deserves it, and the skin does kind of match these the things that it attaches on the cape clips. I don't know, those parts. Normally, I'm one to mix the cosmetics on a frame. So normally I would, I don't know, like do something like that. But because of the high amount of metallic on the Numa skin, I think it's really hard. This leads to a discussion where I basically just said I think it's really challenging to make good mag fashion for the entire time. I'm using the Vengeful Trickster ephemera because I think it gives an angel halo like quality to this thing floating around Mag's neck. And I have the Pakal leg guards and chest plate, which I feel fit kind of nice. The energy effects on them, while quite subtle enough that you might not be able to see that if you're on. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit. If you're on mobile or something. But you can see there is a slight energy effect, even though I'm using quite dim energy colors, that I think vaguely matches the magnetic thingies on Magnuma's joints. You can see down here a little bit better. I thought that kind of sort of a little bit matched the effects on the skin. But you could definitely go for, I would imagine, Vengeful Pull, which is, that might literally be the same effect if you wanted more of that. I went for something pretty subtle. I don't think this is the spiciest fashion in my collection, sure. I also don't play mag that much, but that pull has really big range, so maybe I will. Anyway, not, in my opinion, one of Warframe's strongest fashionistas mag. There are a lot of skins, but I think it's mostly the silhouette that doesn't do it for me. It's just not a very compelling silhouette, or this is like a lot of metallic that I find kind of hard to manage. But yeah, some people, Bionic Me, you said, I think Mag's slender base model makes for a great blank canvas for customization. I feel basically the opposite way. I want the frame to do something extreme, and then I'm going to do something even more something with that. I want, chroma, and then I make infested dragon chroma on top of it, or Nidus's skins have been this is not Nidus. That is in fact Protea, and I clicked it and it. Okay, Nidus, please come forth, my boy. Getting just having, maybe that doesn't seem that extreme to a lot of people, but I like the relative busyness, lots of colors that are interweaving with each other a little bit, and to create something that is a mix of parts. Lots of the feeling of having armor plates, but also looking very infested. I like that. There are definitely skins that go too far, where I would agree if the frame is too much fancy bulk, it gets hard to make your additions make a difference. Indeed, there are some skins where, for a game that is heavily about customization, maybe this skin adds too much. I would agree from time to time. But for the most part, I would rather them do a little more than like way less. Wisp is a good example of a frame that I think has like enough going on that it's not too much in my opinion, but you can still add stuff and have it be meaningful. It's 100% a matter of taste. Like there's no right or wrong about like how much stuff on the frame you want. But why are these three okay? Anyway, oh, it must have been for specters. That must be why that was like that. Anyhow, I think that's all I have to say. Other mag closing thoughts before we go? Not that Ureli is like particularly on the docket. Mesa will be the next frame we do, so in a couple of weeks, if nothing else happens, we'll do Mesa. Ace, you said like Mesa Prime is too much for me personally. I armor up and rip the skirt off. Yeah, like I like Mesa Prime's model. We'll certainly be talking about Mesa fashion in 2 weeks. Ooh, personally, I think Mesa has a lot of strong options for fashion. Ureli is another example since she's here of a frame that I think there's like enough going on, but you can add stuff without it feeling like you're interrupting the model. You can add things without ruining it, I guess you could say. That's what I think anyway. Spectre Siphon works great with pull and or magnetize. Some final mag thoughts, Bionic Me. Sure, because you'll pull enemies into it, and then get more. Spectre Siphon makes enemies in Spectre Rage drop energy orbs 50% of the time they're killed. Cool, yeah. That would also go, I think, kind of nice with maybe not building a ton of strength on mag, which I wasn't. That could be a nice way to get energy. Would you show your Citron real quick? Sure. You just want to see the fashion. I'm using Citron a lot. Probably next week we'll talk about her a lot. And here she is. But yeah, not a lot of time to go over it. Just that's what it is. Happy to answer questions quickly. I've been enjoying Citron a lot, so I put some effort into the fashion. Her model is interesting. Having two like different kinds of metallics is something they've done a lot lately, and which I really enjoy. But anyway, that's well outside the mag discussion. Definitely look forward to more Citron next time. I really enjoyed the gold vein in the center. I am also looking forward to Citrus at some point, though I will also be looking forward to cover up everything. Fair enough. This Syandana was a match I was particularly happy with, the Triotic Syandana. This is Gyre's signature Syandana. And I think it looks nice with you see how Citron has this kind of plate around her neck with her default helmet. It kind of matches, like the shape language feels connected there. And it adds a little bit of a frame to what I think can be a little frustrating, these kind of floating bits on her model. It's interesting, but it cuts an odd silhouette for me by default. And grounding that a little bit with that shape language together has made me very happy, has made my eyeballs happy. I'm also not the biggest fan of her back. Sorry, Citron, it's not you, it's me. But yeah, so I like having a modest Syandana. Anyway, glad if it prompted some inspiration. Cool. Mag, sorry we didn't end on you, but for fashion, I think it was appropriate to look elsewhere. Ooh, that hurts. I'm sorry, Mag. That I shouldn't have done that to you so much. Ooh, it hurts. I mean, I cover up almost every frame's back, Emily. Fair enough. It's interesting. I almost always add a Syandana. I feel the same way as Bionic Me said. There's something about the silhouette when moving. You know, you're bullet jumping a lot, but I enjoy having. I've gotten used to a Syandana there. Maybe that's all it is. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, we do this every week. We talk about builds in Warframe this time every week. And we're going through every frame in the game in order by alphabet, but also only the ones that are primed for now. So it'll be Mesa next, then Mirage, Necros, Neja, etc. But we're doing one every other week right now. So in 2 weeks, we'll do Mesa. Next week, we'll just play. We'll play a bit of Citron, I think. And I'll talk to you then. We'll get some of the new arcanes as well. So with that, yeah, looking forward to the next one. See you all soon. Thank you for the stream. Oh boy, Mesa with Petrify. Looking forward to it. Talk to you all soon.